Okay, now, and his work is, if you take psychotherapy or psychology in university, you're going to be working with Freudian concepts for sure. Jungian concepts are a bit further, more abstract, or more a branch. But he worked with really hardcore insights. But and the unique thing about his insights is that he would work to make them to impress other people about them. Mars in the 11th. But that Uranus, that excitement, that innovativeness, he had to think differently. He had to see out of the block. So say all the words until something special came up. Wow, there it was. He had to break through old complexes and old things so that you could free your sense of confidence. And don't be afraid of being so independent for yourself. He could be independent for himself, but he could see how women were independent or difficult situations, and he could counsel them how to get more independent, how to get free of the complexes and the values that they're carrying with them that were not necessarily valid, that were harming them, not helping them. It would be interesting to know more about his personal relationship. So there's got to be a stubbornness, there's got to be a fixability, this uniqueness, this unique quality of his communications, as being eccentric, that's strongly there. Okay, that's Uranus. Let's go to Neptune. Okay, Neptune, planet of great visions, dreams, ideals, of social conscience, of guilt, of sorrows. It's of dedication and faith, but it's also of guilt, sorrows, dependencies, confusions, expectations. So he has Neptune in Pisces, the very moralistic Pisces. He has very visions about what's right and what's wrong, or how things should be. It's in Pisces. And it's in the 4th house. Domestic secrets, what did parents believe? What did his father believe? What did his mother believe? How interdependent were they? How dependent was her mother? It looks like the mother was very dependent and the father was very strict. But he would have these sorrows or guilts at home, hidden deep within himself. So that's the Neptune in the 4th house. Skeletons in the closet, there's secrets at home, there's things that weren't as they seem around the home life one had. There was undercurrents. So his ability to be sensitive to undercurrents and be affected by them very strong. So his practical ability to relate to people is all of a sudden the relationship. He could see what's going on, who's affecting who, why. He would see that clearly. But then as it settles, and when they start to evaluate it, who's happy, who's not, he would then go down to his understanding, to his Jupiter, as the energy goes down into his 4th house. He eventually gets to this mystical point of what's right or what's wrong, or how do you cultivate self-reliance, or where's dependence. He would sense these dependencies. He would have his own guilts and sorrows. He would be sensitive to other people, and he wouldn't be tolerant to other people having to suffer longer than they did. But his home caused the confusion that initially complicated his foundations, that made him start questioning it, to see practically. So seeing sexually who did what, who did what was a very practical thing to see how much one gives, how much one receives. The Mars and Venus, the Neptune, where somebody's coming from. People come from so many different places. So many people don't live up to the standard. This is a mystical concern. This is a mystical side of wondering, as mystical as the Taurus with the Gemini moon could be. But he would take things in personally. Any sorrow, any guilt, he wouldn't. If someone says you're wrong, he wouldn't want to do anything wrong. But if someone says your policy is totally wrong, your attitude of sexuality and kids, Oedipus, this is sick, this is horrible, this can't be. So he had the confusion around that. But he also had the seeds of that within his own life. And he broke beyond it. But as you get close to him, you can see somebody so preoccupied with his work and his ideas, and so intense in it with the Scorpio rising, he wouldn't be easy to be around. He would be very evasive to be around. Evasive from confrontations, or he wouldn't want to be blamed. But he got blamed for a lot. So it's a puzzle here. it affects his foundation, his motivation. And as he's affected by, I know what's right or what's wrong. And this, somebody's blaming me, it shouldn't be. They're saying what's wrong, they're ignorant, and they're saying what's wrong with me, it's not correct. It's going to affect him, and it goes down to affect his IC, which we'll get to, and that will motivate him. And he gets motivated by the Aquarius by knowing, I can see it, I can understand it, I know. And when he would know, he would begin to project what he knows to make a point. So everybody's interesting. Everybody has their unique puzzles and pieces. You know, and now I wish I knew, every time I do it here, I want to know more about that person's life. You know, it's, we're touching the edge, and I'm limited in how much I know about Freud. I've read a few books, a few things, but about his personal life and relationships, I didn't take notes. I didn't write things down to organize it in the way that an astrologer would see it. Okay, that's Neptune. Let's take a look at Pluto. Do I not have Pluto here? I guess I didn't. Okay, we'll just look at his chart. We'll have to do it from his own chart. His Pluto is also in Taurus, in the 6th house, which is confrontations to health and appreciation. He's taking things in. So when people react, and when he's appreciated, it challenges him. He wants to do something. When he's not liked, it's going to affect him deeply, and he's going to be solidly challenged or threatened by it. And sometimes with him, or you're either with him and going with it, or you're against him, and it's instantly on or off. There's a very harsh switch in his response to people. But at the same time, he could respond to very dark and difficult situations and try and find a way to get through them or around it. The Pluto doesn't square anything, doesn't oppose anything. There's no stress aspects to it. It does conjunct the descendant and oppose the ascendant. So it affects his sense of relationships. There's blocks and fears and confrontation on relationships. But I think he's born 1856, so relationships going through the end of the 19th century were very restrictive and culture bound. So he was able to go to depth beneath the surface, but he had his own personal challenges. Like, you wonder if there was a health problem, but his ability to react to what's wrong or something was right would be an intolerant factor there. And when it would be there, that Pluto would fester and it would begin to affect the Venus, what I have to do about it. And those would be, he would have to put through and fight and probably have to give up a lot of what he wanted to be able to take a stand for what he really knew was best. The 6th house, you're always trying to improve, adjust, and make things better. With Pluto there, you're having to, it's not easy. There's confrontations that force it. So his whole work, he was swimming upstream. He was fighting against the battle, against people who didn't want to believe in what he said. He still did a fairly strong job. But the Pluto doesn't hit any of his functional planets. It does hit his ascendant, descendant, his what's demanded at home in relationships and what he has to put out to affect other people. It kind of picks up from the Sun, Uranus, and Mercury up in the 7th house reacting, but whenever something became personal, it could almost only reach him by challenging him. By, that's not true, or what are you doing? Then it would challenge him. Then he would emotionally want to be appreciated, and he wanted his values to be heard, and he's ready to fight for what he wants, almost overreacting. So he had a passionate storm inside of him, but it would raise up, and then he wouldn't want to act on it so much. It would tend to be sublimated, and then he'd have to work through it. So, I mean, his Freudian therapy really worked for him. It allowed him to practice what he preached. Okay, now I want to get through the angles. Yeah, I see. Okay.